Last week, we spent the time looking at the first part of Revelation. We looked at chapters 4 to 11, and we tried to see how those chapters would harmonize along with the flashbacks. So this week, I'm going to take the time and look at the other half, which is from chapter 12 to chapter 19, and we will see how we can get that to line up as well. So what I'm trying to do really is to give us a great familiarity with the book of Revelation. You know that one of the things I talk about a lot is seeing the big picture, and that's what I want everybody. I want everybody who is a part of this fellowship, everybody who sits in on these Bible studies, to get a complete picture of the book of Revelation, to be so familiar with the outline of the book that you can close your eyes and explain to anybody how the book is laid out. You can look at anything that happens anywhere in the book and you can know immediately where it fits in. Now, I know that we are kind of getting the picture, but I want us to be very familiar with it, because I think that the more familiar we are with it, the easier it is to understand. So I'm going to continue this week. Hi, good to see you, Sister Destiny. I'm going to continue this week by looking at the second part of Revelation. But before I do that, we're just going to take a quick revision. Somebody said that I shouldn't say revision. Revision means we're going to change our ideas. So I'm going to take a quick review of what we looked at last week. Brother Steve, I don't know if you wanted to say, do you want to say something? All right, probably not. So let me just mute you so your microphone does not show up. Okay, you're muted. Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and just review very quickly what we looked at last week. So let me share my screen. Go to the all right. So basically, I want us to just last week we looked at chapter 4, from chapter 4 to chapter 11 of Revelation, and what we saw is that in the beginning of chapter 4, we have a scene in heaven. John is taken into heaven, and he's shown things that must happen afterwards. What we have concluded is that what he is shown is a scene of the judgment. Not the final great judgment before the great white throne, but the judgment that takes place before Jesus comes again, a judgment that takes place in heaven, and that concerns the kingdom of Christ and the kingdom of the beast. This judgment is opened in Revelation chapter 4 and 5, where we see that the books are opened. Jesus, the Lamb, the slain Lamb, he takes the book of the seven seals out of his Father's hand. And we did emphasize that this book of the seven seals is not just a book of prophecy. It's not just a book foretelling the future. It's a book that has the record of the Christian church, or the record of the kingdom of Christ. So the opening of the book is an unveiling or a revelation, an examination of the kingdom of Christ, because like we said, this is the judgment. And the first part of the judgment takes in the kingdom of Christ. So this is what we saw. The next thing that we saw was that the books were open, and when it was open, there were seven seals. The first seal was a white horse, followed by a red, then a black, then a pale horse. And then we saw the souls under the altar. And you know, as we are going through these seals, what we are doing, we are going through the history of the kingdom of Christ, or the kingdom of or the Christian church. And we saw that the church went from good to bad to worse to terrible. And after this very terrible condition, we had the beginning of the judgment, which is where we see those souls under the altar. They are judged and they are given white robes. And then we saw that the next thing that happened was that there was a great day of God's wrath, when we had the sixth seal open. And then the next thing that happened was that we had the seventh seal open sounded, Then you had the 7 trumpets. Maybe I should put this here instead. We had the 7 trumpets. So we had, at the end of the 7th trumpet, what we had next was the 7 trumpets sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. So that's what we saw. The judgment, the 7 seals, and the 7th seal showed us the 7 trumpets. The 7 trumpets were something that happened under the 7th seal. It's not a different set of events. Seal number 7 caused the opening of the 7 trumpets. And the 7 trumpets were 7 judgments, 7 plagues, trumpet plagues, I would call them. And when the 7th one sounded, that was the end. So that's what we looked at last week. And of course, we tried to fit in, I tried to show where some of these events are not in sequence. We looked at the 2 witnesses, which appear between trumpet number 6 and trumpet number 7. And we say these 2 witnesses should be somewhere else. But God brought them in at this point for a certain reason. Same thing, we looked at the 7 seals, and we saw that the sealing of the 144,000 was brought in after seal number 6, but it doesn't belong there in sequence. In actual fact, the sealing of the 144,000 took place somewhere near the end of this 5th seal. And then you had the great day of God's wrath. And that was about the same time that the 2 witnesses did their witnessing as well. I'm not going to go back over this because I went through this last week. What I want to look at this week now is the next part of the book of Revelation, which begins in chapter 12. Chapter 12. Now I might need my highlighter, so let me bring it up. Now in Revelation 12, you have the beginning of part 2. Now part 1 was an examination of the kingdom of Christ, and we saw this under the 7 seals. Seal number 1, the white horse, then the red horse, then the black horse, then the pale horse, then the judgment of the dead Christians. Then you had the sealing of the 144,000. Then you had the 7 trumpets, which are the judgments upon apostate Christendom. All right, the 7 trumpets are the 7 plagues that fall upon apostate Christendom. Now, that's the end of part 1. We have finished the judgment of the kingdom of Christ. And we see that the end of it is that the kingdoms of this world become the kingdoms of our God and of his Christ. Christ receives the kingdom, just like we saw in Daniel chapter 7. So we go to part 2 now, which begins with a woman is seen in heaven, and she's standing on the moon, and she's clothed with the sun. She has on her head a crown of 12 stars. And there's a great red dragon standing there ready to devour the woman as soon as to devour the child, because the woman is pregnant and she's about to give birth to a child. The dragon is set to devour the child. But the child is caught up to God. And when the child is caught up to heaven, Satan the dragon is kicked out of heaven. He and his angels are cast out of heaven, and they are cast down to the earth. This is the introduction to part 2. This is the introduction to the kingdom of Satan. And what we see from the beginning is that Satan's mission and Satan's purpose is to destroy God's warrior, God's ambassador, God, the captain of God's host, the man-child. There's somebody who is to mark Satan's doom. There's somebody who is to bring in an end to Satan's rebellion, and this is the man-child, God's warrior. And so Satan is set to destroy this child as soon as he's born. But of course, the child escapes. So what does Satan do? I mean, the child goes back to heaven, and Satan is kicked out of heaven. You know, there's something interesting, because when God told Eve of the coming warrior, the coming champion, the coming Messiah, God said to Satan, "Thou shalt bruise his heel, and it shall bruise thy head. God said that Satan would bruise the heel, the foot of this child, but the child would bruise Satan's head. And that's very interesting. I want to do a complete presentation on that. But when you hurt somebody's heel, you do them some damage, but you don't destroy them. But it didn't only say that the child would destroy Satan, it said that it would bruise the head of the serpent. When we talk about the head, we're talking about the principles, the philosophy, the governing principles behind Satan's kingdom. Christ, the man-child, would crush Satan's principle. And I want to make that point because you remember we have said that Christ's enmity against Satan, Christ's warfare, is not based on force. He's not going to use a blast of light and wipe Satan out of existence. No, he's going to destroy him by destroying his principle, his philosophy. The principle on which Satan builds is a principle that Jesus will destroy. And that is why this conflict is taking place, because it's not a conflict of force, it's a conflict of ideologies. Jesus will destroy Satan's ideology. His ideology is independence of God. It is government by rules, while God's principle is government by his spirit inside. So Jesus will destroy Satan's kingdom and Satan's philosophy. He will crush the head of the serpent. So anyway, what does Satan do? He sets out to destroy the kingdom of Christ. He cannot catch the king, so he goes after the kingdom. And the Bible says he first of all makes war against the woman. He can't destroy the woman. Then he goes to make war on the remnant of her seed. Now, when it says the remnant of her seed, I just want to highlight something here. In Revelation 12 and verse 17, it says, the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So this highlights Satan's work, or the work of Satan's kingdom. Now we look at this and we see that Satan is he's making war against the woman, against the church. But then it says that he goes to make war against the remnant of her seed. And this shows us that what we're going to look at now is what is focused on the last remaining part of the kingdom of Christ, the remnant of the seed of the woman. So what we are going to look at in Revelation, this shows us that Revelation is not focused on historical events. That's not the emphasis of Revelation. The emphasis is the last war against the remnant of the seed. This shows us that we are down at the end of time, because it says there's only a remaining portion. There's only a small remaining portion of the body of Christ. That's what the remnant of the seed means. It's a remaining portion of Christ's body. Christ is the seed. So the remaining portion of his body is what Satan goes to make war with. So we see that Satan has been making war against the woman since the time that the man-child was caught up to heaven. She brought forth a man-child that was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and the child was caught up unto God and to his throne. That was 2,000 years ago. And when the dragon saw that he was cast onto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. That has been taking place for the past 2,000 years. But then it says, the dragon was angry with the woman because the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the water which the dragon used to try to destroy the woman. And the dragon was angry with the woman, and he went to make war with the remnant of her seed. So what we're about to look at in the rest of Revelation is Satan's warfare against the remnant, the remaining portion of the body of Christ. That's you and me. That's where we come into the picture. Okay, so Revelation is an end time book. It's about the last conflict. And God is giving us understanding today, because we are the people who will experience the fulfillment of these prophecies. So what we see next is that, yeah, here's the great red dragon. I just wanted to notice something about the dragon. I'm going to come back to this, but I kind of modified this dragon to do it the way how I think it should be done. All right, if you look at this, this one has the horns all over, but I had to modify this dragon. Oh, no, this one has the horns on the back. Yeah, this one, somehow this artist got it right, but I kind of made it a little more obvious. So the dragon has 7 heads with 7 crowns. You can see that. And he has 10 horns. And if you look at most of the pictures that people give you of this dragon, the horns are scattered all over the heads. But based on what we see in Revelation 17, this is not how it should be. The horns are not on any of the heads. Now, the best place I could put them was on the back of the dragon. I don't know how they appeared. It would have been maybe somewhere behind the heads, maybe. But anyway, I just dropped them in behind on the back of the dragon, because actually these horns are not on any of the heads, and you're going to see why I say that. So I'm going to come back to the dragon, but let's just see where we are. I want to follow this sequence of time first, then I'll come back to the description of the dragon. So what we see so far is the dragon making war against the woman. Then he goes to make war against the remnant of the seed. Now, let me go back to the Bible and show you something. This is Revelation chapter 11 on the left. I'm going to break it up so I can show you chapter 12. I'm sorry, Revelation 12 is on the left. I'm going to show you Revelation chapter 13 on the right. All right, so Revelation 13 on the right. Now, the last thing, remember, I want to remind us that the book of Revelation, like all the other books in the Bible, was not written in chapters. It's one continuous narrative. So you should read it like this. We should read it like this. And the dragon was angry with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. And I stood up on the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. Now, actually, this translation is questionable. I'm going to look at the NASB and see what it gives me. Now, look at what it says. It says, and the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. If you look at the King James Version, it says, and I stood up on the sand of the sea, meaning that John went and stood up on the seashore. I don't think that this is accurate. John is in heaven, and John is watching a movie. So I don't think John went and stood up on the sand of the seashore. It makes more sense to me what the NASB says. The dragon goes to make war with a woman, and he goes and he stands up on the seashore. And when he stands up on the seashore, what happens? I saw a beast coming out of the sea having 10 horns, 7 heads. On his horns, 10 diadems or 10 crowns. And on his heads were blasphemous names. Now, I wanted to notice something. Let's go back up a little bit in chapter 12. It says in chapter 12, in verse 3, I saw a great red dragon having 7 heads. Now, it says the beast has 7 heads. It says the dragon had 10 horns. It says the beast has 10 horns. It says the dragon has 7 crowns upon his heads. But the beast does not have 7 crowns on his heads. No. Instead, he has 10 crowns. It says diadems. It's the same thing as crowns. He has 10 crowns upon his 10 heads. So he's different from the dragon here. I'm going to explain why later on. But anyway, what I wanted to see is that God is making a connection between the dragon and this beast. He's making an inescapable connection that you can't miss. God is showing you that what the dragon is transferred, or the beast has the same characteristics. And how do we explain that? Are we being told that the beast is a dragon? No. Let me. I don't want to get too deep into it because we have been through it before. But at the same time, I don't want to rush over it. I want to make sure we get at least a general idea. Now we know that literally Satan doesn't have 7 heads and he doesn't have 10 horns. So why does God show us Satan? Because this great red dragon, of course, is Satan. The Bible tells you very clearly in verse 9 that the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan. So we know that the dragon is Satan. But God shows you Satan having 7 heads. Now, what does that mean? Now, what we can see as we study the beast in chapter 13 and the beast in chapter 17 is that a head represents a great kingdom or an empire. You know, the beast has 7 heads, 5 have fallen, 1 is and the other isn't come. Each head represents a great kingdom. So what this is showing us is that Satan is working. Satan has 7 heads, meaning that in his work in planet Earth, Satan has represented himself in 7 great kingdoms or 7 great empires. This is Satan's way of working in this world. We have made that point that Satan does not appear to people in his personal form, and he does not work in his personal form. What he does is he works through human organizations. God does not permit Satan to attack you physically, or we would all be dead. But what he does, he permits Satan to influence his subjects, which are the people of the world, and he works through the great empires to try to destroy God's kingdom and the people in the kingdom. So we see that Satan's work in the world has been expressed through 7 great kingdoms. But it also says there are 10 horns. And remember, I showed you that these 10 horns are not on any of the heads. These 10 horns are not on any of the heads. We learn that when we go to Revelation 17. So the horns and the heads are disconnected, which means that Satan's work in the world is through 7 horns, but in the last moments of time, it won't be any head, because it says that the beast, the 7 heads will fall, and then it will be 10 horns. The last manifestation of Satan's kingdom on the earth will be through 10 horns. Not through a head, not through a head kingdom, but through a kingdom that has 10 horns. So I hope that is understandable. And so, you know, there's a principle that Satan, that God, that Jesus is the express image of his Father, and that God has given to his Son all power and all authority in his kingdom. We see a similar principle here where Satan has given the beast is shown as being the express image of Satan. He has 10 horns and 7 heads, and Satan gives him, the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. In a way, Satan is trying to mirror what God did through Jesus. What God is doing is showing you that Satan's kingdom is trying to imitate his kingdom. Everything is the same. Satan has an ambassador, he has an agent. God did it, and Satan is working in a similar way. And the beast is the image of the dragon because he has 7 heads and 10 horns. It's not just a similarity in appearance, it's a similarity in principle, because this beast represents, in one symbol, in one beast, the 7 kingdoms that Satan has worked through are manifested in this one beast. In other words, instead of showing you 7 different beasts, like he did in Daniel, he showed you the lion, the bear, the leopard, and the great beast. In Daniel 7, he showed you 4 beasts. But instead of doing that in Revelation, he's giving you everything in one picture, okay? He's giving you a panorama, one symbol that covers everything. And so instead of 7 beasts, he gives you one beast. But it makes you know that it covers the 7 kingdoms because the beast has 7 heads. And later on in Revelation 17, he's going to tell you 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. So he's showing you that the beast is a composite beast. He's covering a great deal of history in one symbol. All right. So let's move on from there. So the next thing that happens is that the dragon calls up this beast. He stands up on the seashore and he calls his son out of the sea. Let me put it that way. And this beast has 7 heads, and those heads are imaginary. I don't know what they look like. We are only told that he had the mouth of a lion. But I put different animals because I believe that each head represents a different kingdom. And God usually represented different kingdoms by different animals. So I use different heads. That's my imagination. But the beast has 7 heads, and then you have the 10 horns at the back. And so this beast comes out of the sea. That's chapter 13. So we went from chapter 12 here. We skip over to chapter 13, and that's what we see, the beast coming up. And of course, this beast, when he comes up, he gets a pal. He has a friend. The beast that comes up out of the earth with the 2 horns becomes a friend of this one. I don't have a picture of that one, but you know he's in chapter 13. So chapter 13 is the 2 beasts. But the second one is called the false prophet. Okay, so he's only called a beast in chapter 13, but later on he's called a false prophet because he is telling everybody to worship this beast and to receive the mark of this beast. So he's a false prophet. He goes before the face of this beast to draw worship to this beast. All right, so he's called a false prophet. That's Revelation 13. Revelation 14, what happens? 3 angels fly through the midst of heaven. Why are they flying? They are flying because this beast and his friend have ordered everybody to receive the mark of this beast. And this mark of the beast is the great test for the entire planet. It is to be the great time of temptation that will try those who dwell upon the earth. Christians and unbelievers alike are going to be tested by this great time of trouble. So what will happen? Well, here's what I am very confident is going to happen. God allows the beast, God allows Satan through the beast. God allows it. God allows him to bring a situation upon the world where everybody upon the planet is commanded to do something that everybody knows is contrary to the will of God. Let me say that again. To test the whole world, not just Christians, but unbelievers alike. That's what the Bible says, Revelation 3 and verse 10. In case you never saw it, let me go there and read quickly. Revelation 3 and verse 20. God talks about it and he says to the church of Philadelphia, because you have kept the word of my patience, I also will keep you from or during the hour of temptation. He calls it an hour of temptation, an hour of testing, which shall come upon all the world. To do what? To try or to test those that dwell upon the earth. It's not something for the church, it's something for the entire planet. Because you see, before Jesus comes again, every single man, woman, and child will have an opportunity to make their decision for Christ. God is not going to let Jesus come and leave the world in darkness. There's darkness everywhere today, but something is to happen to awaken the world to an awareness that there is an obligation to God. People who are sitting on the fence will make their decisions. People who are weak will become strong, or they will fall away from Christ completely. Everybody will become what he is. And maybe you think I didn't say that right, but I said it right. Everybody is going to become what he is. If you are not a person who has an awareness or who cares about God, you will go in your direction. If you have any kind of respect for God and there is in you the potential for salvation, this crisis will make you think and you will find your proper place. So it will divide the world into 2 camps. The mark of the beast, as bad as it is a crisis that God allows to judge the world. Okay, so that will be the judgment for the world in general. So, and this is before Jesus comes again. It's a judgment in the sense of bringing the world to a decision. So, everybody is brought to judgment. And if you look, all right, let me put 13 on this side and put 14 on the other side. So, in chapter 14, what we see now is that when the mark of the beast comes, you see chapter 13 No man might buy or sell except the one who had the mark or the name or the number of his name. You jump over to chapter 14, and what you see is, I saw another angel flying in heaven, having I like the King James. I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to them that dwell on the earth, to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. The mark of the beast is our opportunity. All of you have been wanting to be more zealous. You have been wanting to be filled with the Spirit. You have been wanting to see fire behind the movement. This is the moment. That's why I say you can't run before God sends you. God has a plan. God's catalyst is that when Satan brings his greatest crisis, then the light will shine brightest of all. This is a time when the three angels fly, and the flying of the three angels, the flight of the three angels is not messengers from heaven in the primary sense. It's God working through his people. We saw it under the imagery in Revelation 11. We saw the two witnesses who were given power for 1260 years. They prophesied in sackcloth. We saw it in Revelation 7, where the 144,000 are being sealed. It's the same time period when these three angels are carrying the message. They are warning against the fall of Babylon. Why does Babylon fall? Because Babylon is accepting the mark of the beast. We see it as the hour of God's judgment. That's what the first angel says. Why is it the hour of God's judgment? Because God uses this crisis to prove and to judge and to test and to try every person on earth. And of course, the third angel warns that if any man worship the beast and his image, they're going to suffer the wrath of God, which means they're going to be completely cut off from God forever. It's the most terrible time, and yet the most wonderful time in the history of the planet. And the thing is, brothers and sisters, it is our generation. I'm 71, but I'm still saying our generation. I still have some fire in the old bones. And I'm hoping and expecting to be a part of, to be on the battlefield when the conflict arises. So the three angels fly. And if you read Revelation 14, what happens after the three angels fly? It says, after they fly, Babylon is fallen, the third angel follows them. You go down in Revelation 14 and it says, I looked and behold a white cloud. That sounds like Jesus coming, but it isn't. Upon the cloud one sat like the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown. It's Jesus, but it says in his hand there's a sharp sickle. And an angel comes and tells him to thrust in thy sickle and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. So he puts in his sickle and the earth was reaped. Another angel came out of the temple and he had power over fire. And he tells Jesus again, put in your sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for the grapes are fully ripe. And again he puts in his sickle and he gathers the vine of the earth, that is the grapes, and casts it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. So we are not talking about the coming of Jesus. The harvest takes place and the grapes are thrown into the wrath of God. And I'm going to show you what that is in just a moment. So if you think of the parables of Jesus, this is like where Jesus says, the man who came to the wedding garment without the wedding supper without a wedding garment, he's bound hand and foot and is thrown into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. There is a separation before Jesus comes again. People think that when the harvest takes place, it's the coming of Jesus. No, it's just before the coming of Jesus. The harvest is a separation of those who have the mark from those who have the seal. That is the harvest. It's a separating work. And when that happens, those who have the mark are thrown into the wrath of God. And what is the wrath of God? Go to the next chapter and you will see. The next chapter says, I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous. 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. So we see that when it says that the harvest takes place, we're not talking about the coming of Jesus. We're talking about the separation of the sheep from the goats. We're talking about the separation of the wheat from the tares. And the final judgment upon those who have rejected Christ. When I say judgment, let me explain what I think it is. I think it is that God leaves them completely alone to the master that they have chosen. I don't think the seven last plagues is God torturing people. I think God does the worst thing that he can do to anybody, which is he leaves them alone. They get what they wanted, and what happens? There is disaster all over. The earth begins to break apart, and terrible diseases break out upon people. It's not God torturing people, it's people being left to the gods that they chose. And that's the worst thing that God can do. So our image has it like this. You have the three angels flying, and the three angels separate the people of the world so that the harvest takes place. The person with the sickle reaps, and the world is divided into two camps. That's the reaping. And then you have the seven last plagues. And these plagues, as we are told, when you look at them as the trumpets in Revelation 8 and 11, it says, the only persons that they cannot hurt are the men who have the seal of God, are the people who have the seal of God. Other than that, the trumpet plagues are going to devastate the whole planet. Everybody on the world is going to suffer the effects of these plagues, except those who have the seal of God. So what do we see after these seven plagues? Remember, we are going in a sequence. We saw the dragon goes to make war against the woman. He calls up the beast to be his agent. The beast and his friend brings in the mark. When the mark is brought in, the three angels' messages are proclaimed with great power. And at the end of, and during those messages, the world is being divided. At the end of it, you have the two classes, the wheat and the tares. And then the seven last plagues come as a judgment upon those who have received the mark. What do we see next? Well, after the plagues, we know that the next thing that should happen is the coming of Jesus, because the plagues are the last great judgment. But instead of seeing the coming of Jesus, we have another kind of flashback. We have another kind of flashback. This is what we should have seen. We should have seen the coming of Jesus. That is what follows behind the seven last plagues. But instead we see this woman riding this beast. And the reason is God stops the action. He stops the action and then he takes us back. He says, look here, okay, I'm going to do something for you. John, I'm going to show you something special. I am going to show you the judgment of the woman. Because what have we been looking at? We have been looking at the judgments upon the world, right? The world has been divided, wheat and tares, and the plagues have fallen. And then God says, hold on, let me show you something special. I'm going to show you the judgment of the woman in particular. Why? Because this woman, we have not been seeing much of this woman. What we have been seeing is the beast and the dragon. But the woman is in there, and she plays a big part. So God stops and says, this woman Babylon that we're talking about, let me take you back and show you who this woman is and what her career has been like. So God takes us back into the prophecy, and he shows us this woman sitting upon the beast. So, earlier on, we saw the beast coming up out of the sea. There was no woman. We saw that the beast made war against the saints. But God wants us to understand it's not just the beast and his pal, the false prophet. There's somebody else in the picture. And he shows us it's this woman. And so you understand that somehow, what God is telling you is that even though we have been looking at a secular power, there is a religious element. There is a religious element involved in what the beast has been doing all along. Now, when you talk about religion, the only relationship religion should have with any power is a relationship with God. But this woman has been in an adulterous relationship with the powers of the world. She claims to be God's woman. She claims to be, I believe it primarily represents in our time apostate Christendom, primarily. But I believe it takes in more than that, because you see, the beast has 7 heads, and she has been sitting upon these heads from the beginning. If you actually go to Revelation 17. Let me go there quickly and show you where it actually says that she has been sitting upon the heads. Let me see if I can find the exact verse. Yeah, here it is in verse 9. It says the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth, or the woman is sitting. So the woman is sitting, or has been sitting, upon all 7 heads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. She has been sitting on all heads. So if these heads take you back into history, because remember 5 have fallen, so we go back into the past. 1 is, that's the present in the time of the prophecy, and 1 is still to come. 1 was still future. So the woman has been sitting on all of them. So this woman cannot be just the Roman Catholic Church. It cannot be just the Protestant churches of today. It represents the religious element that has been riding this beast over the ages. Religion is properly the arena of a relationship with God. But this woman has been always in this adulterous relationship with the beast. And so God says, look here, I have a special place for her in the judgment. Those who claim to represent God and are really doing the devil's work, God says, I have a special judgment for them. And so I'm going to show you the judgment of this woman. That's what Revelation 18 is about. It shows you the judgment of the woman that rides the beast. And God tells us this because we have just been looking at the 7 plagues. And God wants us to know that Babylon is not forgotten. She has a place in it, and she has her reward as well. So the next thing that happens now, after we see the judgment of the woman in Revelation 18, is that we see the coming of Jesus. This is a very poor picture, but anyway, it's the best that I can do at the moment. But I mean, it's a picture of Jesus. It's Revelation says he rides on a white horse, and the armies in heaven are following, and he has on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And it says, I saw the beast and his armies gathered together to make war against the one who was sitting on the horse. And of course, the false prophet was there as well. I don't have him in this picture. Maybe I should. But anyway, that is where it ends, because the beast is taken and the false prophet, and they are thrown into the lake of fire. And Satan the dragon is cast into the bottomless pit. So this is the end of the judgment of the beast. He is thrown into the lake of fire. He is destroyed forever, along with his friend, the false prophet. And Satan is locked away for 1,000 years. At the end of it, he also will be thrown into the lake of fire. So you see, Revelation 11 shows you the end of the kingdom of Christ, which is that Christ receives an everlasting kingdom. And Revelation 19 shows you the end of the kingdom of the beast, which is that the beast is thrown into the lake of fire. And this, in a nutshell, is really what the book of Revelation is about. So, if I could go through now in sequence, let me see. I have some things in a wrong order, so let me just let me try to put them in the sequence in which I just dealt with it. These two I don't want here, so let me move them out of the way. All right, so we started here. The judgment scene is open in heaven. The history of the kingdom of Christ is presented under the 7 seals. Out of seal, when at the end of seal number 7, we come to the end of the history of the kingdom of Christ, and we come to the end of the judgment of Christ's kingdom, and what we see is the 7 trumpets, which is the 7 trumpet plagues. And this is followed by the blowing of the 7th trumpet, when the kingdoms of this world are given to Christ. Then you switch to part 2. Part 2 shows you, no, I don't want these. Part 2 shows you the dragon's warfare against the kingdom of Christ. So he tries to destroy the woman, the history of his enmity against the church, but then he comes to the seashore and he calls up the beast. It shows you that Satan has been behind this beast from the beginning. But we are interested in his warfare against the remnant. So we're at the end of time now, and it shows you that at the end of time, the beast and his friend, the false prophet, bring about the mark of the beast. And at this point, you have the preaching of the gospel with great power, 3 angels' messages. Then you have the harvest when the earth is divided into wheat and tares. And then you have the 7 plagues. Then God makes special mention of the woman riding the beast and gives you some details about her before he shows you Jesus returning and putting an end to the beast and his kingdom. So this basically is what we see. This basically is what Revelation is about in a nutshell. Now I'm going to highlight something that let me see. I'm going to show you from this panel, all right? Because I'm going to show something. Now, if you will notice, when you look at the dragon, he has 7 crowns on his head, but the horns have no crowns. When you look at the beast in Revelation 13, he has...
I think you made a mistake there, Brother David. He said that
Yes,
the dragon had no crowns.
he had no crowns on his horns.
Okay.
He had crowns on the head, but not on the horns. You look at the beast in 13, he has no crowns on the head, but he has crowns on the horns. When you look at the beast in chapter 13, he has no mention of any crowns at all, neither on the heads nor on the horns. Now, some people have looked at this and said, you know, this is clear that there are 2 different beasts. But absolutely, I am totally in disagreement with that. That is not true, and I'm going to show you why I am persuaded. How can we explain this? I'm going to show you how we explain it and harmonize this. So, first of all, let us understand what it means, what the crowns mean. Now, the dragon has 7 crowns, and why? Because Satan's appearance in this world has been in all ages, but he has manifested himself through 7 great kingdoms. And as I said, in the end of time, he will manifest himself through 10 horns. All right, hold that now and look at the next picture. What about this beast? This beast is a panorama of Satan's kingdom in all ages. But at any point in time, how many heads does the beast have? Only one. The beast has only 1 head, although we are shown 7 heads. Why do I say he has only 1 head? Because God tells you that 5 have fallen. The 5 that have fallen, does the beast have them? No, he doesn't. They are in the history of the beast, but they're not a part of the beast at the moment. And what about the one that is yet to come? That one has not arrived yet. So the beast has only 1 head. So the beast does not have 7 heads to be crowned as an entity that has existed. Although God gives us the picture of the beast in a panorama, in a historical panorama, really, the point in time when the beast is manifested as having his power is the time when the 10 horns receive their kingdom. Okay, I'm going to read that in just a moment. If you look at the beast in Revelation that the woman is riding, it's the same beast. But the difference with the beast in Revelation 17 is that at the time you are looking at the beast in 17, it is not the 10 horns have not received any power yet, so they don't have any crowns on the head. Let me go there and look at that. When you go to Revelation 17, it says, and the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet. And so if you look at the beast in Revelation 17, look at the beast in Revelation 17, these 10 horns have received no kingdom as yet. So of course, God does not tell you that they have horns because they have not received a kingdom yet. But when you go back to the one in chapter 13, the one in chapter 13 is not covering any particular. God is showing you the beast as a panorama. So the entire history of the beast is there, including the time of the 10 horns. So we are shown that the 10 horns also have crowns. That's how I would explain this discrepancy, why there are 10 horns at one point, no horns at another point. The reason is because it says the 10 horns have received no kingdom as yet, but they will receive power as kings. When they receive power as kings, then they will have crowns. But in 17, they have received no power as yet, so they're not wearing crowns. So that's how I would explain that discrepancy. Now, I think I've gone through everything that I wanted to go through in a nutshell. If I go through anything else, I'm going to get too detailed and go, and we've already been through in detail. So I'm going to pause at this time and ask if there are any questions or anything that anybody would want me to clarify. Okay, I'm going to assume that it's clear.
Brother David.
Yes, Sister Natalie.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. The seven head, is it the seven head, the combination of the old world and the new world?
Okay, that's a good question because I really believe that the seven heads have to do with the beast from the old world. Okay, Satan's ambassador from the beginning has been the powers of the old world because for most of the history of the Bible, the new world, no, for all of the history of the Bible, what we call the new world does not play a part. America, Australia, North and South America, they don't play a part in the biblical world. The biblical world is focused around Europe, Asia, North Africa, the Middle East. That's the biblical world. So though the beast primarily and foremost at the beginning is an old world beast. When the new world came into the picture, I believe God represented it as a beast with the two horns, the beast from the Americas. So that beast that we're focusing on is primarily a beast. The old world represents the old world power. Okay, so that's how I understand it, Sister Natalie.
Yeah, let me ask you a question about the plagues. Now, back in the Old Testament, when the 10 plagues was poured out, it was judgments coming from God, right?
Yeah.
So, when it talks about the vials of the bowls being poured out in Revelation 16 from the angels, you don't think it's God doing this?
In a sense, in the biblical sense, everything that happens, God does it. Okay, God says, I create evil and I create good. I make alive and I kill. So God, what God allows, God takes responsibility for it. So you could say that God does it. But I mean, okay, let me tell you how I would look at it. Okay, it's one thing to step back and watch. I'm going to put myself in a situation and ask you to consider it. Okay, I watch Brother Ian pouring fire. Let me say Sister Natalie. He pours fire. He pours gasoline on Sister Natalie and sets her alight. I stand back and I watch it happening. I'm grieved and I'm hurt and I'm pained. I allow it because Natalie has told me, don't interfere in my life. I don't want you in my life. Don't interfere. So I watch Brother Ian doing it and I say nothing. It's a different thing than if I say to Ian, here is some gasoline and matches. I want you to go and light Natalie. So it's a different thing. And that is how I look on the seven last plagues. A lot of people think that God is the one who lights the fire and pushes the matches and says, I'm going to torture you people because you never accepted me. That's one perspective. The other perspective, which I believe is more accurate, is where we say, God says, I gave you every opportunity to come to the light. You asked me to get out of your life. I'm going to give you what you're looking for. I cannot intervene anymore. And when this happens, men are left to the consequences of what they brought upon themselves. God does not interfere. So in this sense, God does it, but he doesn't do it actively. And I think it makes a big difference because if he does it actively, it means that God, a part of God's character is to torture his enemies. And I don't believe that.
Um, yeah, I understand what you're saying. So it's like God has warned everybody that a flood is coming, but those that don't heed to the warning, they drown.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And he says he does it. Okay. When David was tempted to number Israel, God said the Bible says God tempted David to do it. When Pharaoh hardened his heart, that's a good example. The Bible says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. It says he did it. And yet God says to Pharaoh, how long will you refuse to let my people go? How long will you harden your heart against me? If God hardens Pharaoh's heart and then criticizes Pharaoh for a hard heart, God is a hypocrite. God cannot blame you for doing what he makes you do. No, but God means I'm allowing you to do this. I'm giving you permission to be free. How long are you going to use your freedom against me? So,
Right,
the
right.
Bible says God did it, but he actually didn't
Yeah, yeah.
actively do it.
Right, 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 right. God allowed him to harden his heart.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Uh,
Yes, brother Michael.
I just had a thought while listening to your preaching. Could the hour of temptation be tied to the 1 hour that the ten horns are given, uh, power?
Um, yes, the language is the same, and the question is when God says an hour of temptation, does he mean a literal hour, a period of time, a figurative hour, or is it just an expression? Like Jesus said, mine hour is not yet come. I put that into the formula as well. When Jesus says, mine, you can go up to Jerusalem now because your time is always ready, but my hour has not yet come. And then again, he says, Father, save me from this hour, but for this cause came I to this hour. So he's using the hour there as a point in time rather than a period of time. So I would ask the question of whether or not Revelation is using the same kind of broad language, or whether it is being specific and say God is saying a prophetic hour. Then people start calculating and saying it would be for a period of 2 weeks or a period of 4 weeks or something like that. I've tended to believe that it means, in a general sense, a point in time, like your moment has come, rather than that you have to calculate the time. And I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Okay, I give that, but it's just my perspective on it.
Okay, yeah, and also Jesus is the one speaking when he says the hour of temptation to the Church of Philadelphia. So I can see that. That makes sense. The other thing I wanted to say, just about a question regarding the sexual immorality that occurred in Lot, or the days of Lot, Sodom. We see that. But when I was looking to how Christ said that it will be as it was in the days of Noah, it says that the first polygamist was actually Lamech. And if we believe the lifespans of the people at that time, I believe polygamy may have been practiced in the days of Noah. Do you believe that's a biblical principle, or am I going too far to say that polygamy was practiced in the days of Noah?
No, no, no. I think you're perfectly right
Okay.
about that. I mean, as you said, Lamech was the first polygamist. He took two wives. But I mean, I'm going to tell you, polygamy is a thing that men delight in. Okay, we don't delight in it because well, we might delight in it inwardly, but we don't practice it because we are Christians, and so we restrain that part of us. But polygamy, if there are no restraints, polygamy is a surety for the human race. So once old Lamech introduced it, I'm sure it was widespread by the time that the flood
Okay.
came.
Because the
So
thing I found that was kind of shocking in Isaiah is Isaiah chapter 4, verse 1. The context, Isaiah is describing the state of Jerusalem before its destruction by Babylon. In Isaiah chapter 4, verse 1, the wording in that day, it's referring to when they will be, destroyed, but it says, and in that day, 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, We will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. And this is a strange development. Certainly, I agree with you 100% about the rise of atheism. That's undeniable, and I believe when the woman is destroyed, atheism will be the final thing. But I think a twist that might come from false religion is some of the things you hear where people are arguing that, oh, wasn't Solomon a polygamist? Wasn't David a polygamist? And uh, something as like a counteracting to what we see in a lot of the LGBT movement is Satan is kind of making a vice with atheism and false religion right at the end of time for it to sort of ensnare believers and unbelievers alike. That's just a theory that I had. We haven't seen it really manifest. I don't think there's certainly no lobby for polygamy. There's certainly no movement for polygamy like there is for LGBT. But I could just see it coming because it's such a perversion of God's character to think that that is actually what he would endorse. And, I'm of the position that there were no atheists in the days of Noah. I understand functionally they were. Functionally they were. They acted like it. But I don't, they had such a perversion of God's character and that led them to act the way they did that required a flood. And I think that's kind of what we'll see right before the hour where the 10 horns are given absolute control. But up until then, false religion is going to get to a point where it's just so abominable, so unacceptable that atheism will seem even appealing to people,
Mm-hmm. You know, they I look at what is happening today, and apart from Christian expectations, there's reason to be thoroughly frightened. They there's in a few years ago, people used to stop and think. They used to stop and think. And when you stop and think, atheism doesn't progress as readily. Because when you stop and think, the evidence for a creator is too compelling. Normally, people who stop to think don't become atheists. What I find about today, I mean, I listen, I go on Facebook, I look on YouTube, I talk to people, and I find that the arguments that they present, they don't present arguments. They only present dogma. You believe in some fairy tale about some god. It's like you believe in the Cookie Monster. They don't think about what they're saying. They just borrow the cliches. It's convenient to get lost in your computer, on your tablet, in your phone, and don't think. And when you talk about atheism taking over the world, the baubles that are being presented by technology, if I were not a Christian, I would delight to have a microchip placed in my body. Okay, I would delight that I go to the bank, I go on an airplane flight anywhere, and I have everything in my hand. Okay, I can't forget anything. Where we went to be on this holiday for the past few days. I mean, what they did, they put a little wristlet on the wrist of everybody who was in the room, and you kept it on until you left. They had a wristband, and the key was a little card that was attached to the wristband. You just put it on the room door, and you're in and you're out. And so you couldn't lose your key, and you couldn't get locked out. Everybody in the room had one. That is convenient. If there was one chip like this that you put in your body, and you go, why wouldn't I accept it? Why wouldn't I be delighted that nobody can hack my account so easily? I can have access anywhere. So the technological world that is being presented is delightful if you take God out of the picture. That's one reason why Christians, true Christians, will be stubborn and hard and stupid in the eyes of the world and old-fashioned. And that's a part of what will cause the conflict. But the other thing I wanted to make was that if I didn't believe in God, honestly, you men, and I don't know about the women, you men, what are some of your fantasies? When I say the fantasies, I mean your carnal self. You men. All right, I don't know. I don't know about any of you, but I know that outside of Christ, what it is that I would get indulged, what I would indulge in, and what I would go after. So, Brother Michael, maybe polygamy is not official, but look here, there is in the world today a lot of favor being shown to one man who is married, who has 3 women living with him, 2 women, 3 women. The reason why it doesn't work more is because most women won't put up with it, right? Most women won't put up with it. But if you can find those who will put up with it and you're not a Christian, you will delightfully jump into the relationship. So whatever the human mind will accept in the way of perversion, it will be indulged in, because I've heard it said, and I think it is true, that the 2 greatest cravings of the carnal nature is food and sex. I don't know how true that is, but I know that the carnal, I know that those are 2. Well, in my case, I'm an aberration. I don't love food that much, but I know that those are probably the 2 greatest cravings of human beings. So if you take God out of the picture, why restrain yourself? Why? The thing is, at one point, somebody might have said, letting loose your passions is bad for society. But that was in the past when people were backward and they didn't think. Nowadays, the psychologists will tell you that if it brings you pleasure, freedom, and we shouldn't be bigoted and we shouldn't be prejudiced against people, what harm does it do to you if people practice what they enjoy doing? You know, their arguments are based on the idea that God has no authority because there's no God, and the only authority is what you feel to do. So I absolutely fully expect every kind of sexual perversion to become very popular because it's the way the carnal heart operates. If the only thing that can stop it, as I've said, not even stop it, maybe hinder it, if there comes a time when by some impossible device the world turns back to God, the world turns back to God. I know some people are expecting that. I don't see that in the prophecy. Some people think everybody is going to become Christian and they are going to make a big Sunday law. Well, if that happens, the most surprised person in the world will be David Clayton. I'll be the most surprised. I don't
Oh no,
expect.
yeah, absolutely. And one final just comment, I will say your observation that the only other time 666 appears in the same wording is when Solomon began to receive 666 talents of gold. And then he, in the next chapter, practices polygamy. That has been such an eye-opening aspect to my study because I believe the beast kingdom will not be, it's not going to be a gun to your head. It's going to be an extremely attractive and simple, wonderful life that without God. And so, thank you.
True. Yes, brother Michael. Go ahead, brother Ray.
Yes, good afternoon, brothers and sisters. You mentioned during this study here something that caught my attention, which it always does, but this time I have a different thought on it. Um, when you said that Satan gives his power over to the beast, meaning whatever it is, whoever it is, he's giving his authority to do so, whatever the person pleases, because he is on Satan's side. He's one of Satan's children, per se. Like God gave Christ the power to do many things while on earth, you know. Hence, now Christ is everywhere present with us. So, I have an observation that my question is, could this be a particular man, right, that Satan is handing over his power? Because if he wants to counterfeit what God does, God sent his only begotten Son, and Satan would also have probably someone on his side that will do his bidding here on earth, because the Bible does talk about if you hear him say, "Lo, he's there," or "Lo, he's here," don't go there, because if possible, even the elect could probably be bamboozled. It could be fooled. So this be possible. And the question I am asking this is because I just recently did a little research on a documentary. Uh, these scientists, they finally figured out how to make your children the way you want them. If you want them with blue eyes, if you want them with hazel eyes, if you want them light skin, dark skin, Haitian looking color, hair colors, they've been able now to configure the DNA system in order to give you what you want as a child. It could be a boy or it could be a
Hold on,
girl.
brother Wayne. Brother Ray, I see you, Wayne. Can you mute because you might make a little noise. I'll get to you after, brother Raymond. Okay, just mute. Bye, brother Ray.
Yeah, so the science is there. It's not it no more. Where now you could choose if you want your child to have blue eyes. He's got your DNA now, mind you, but you can put blue eyes on him. You can kind of construct them, give him brown hair, blonde hair, nappy hair, soft hair, whatever you choose for your child to be born. They tamper with that DNA. They give it different codes. So now, let's say you got blonde hair, you're light skinned, or you look like an Indian, or black, or Asian, or now they have figured this out. And I'm figuring out that, and I'm believing this because the late Michael Jackson, none of his kids look like him. They all look white, blonde hair, and all different kids, and they all are his kids. It comes from his genes. So now, could it be that this is, because this, for me, this goes beyond homosexuality. It goes beyond, because now you're tampering with how to make men look the way you want it to come out. If you want it to be a girl, you want it to have this, blue eyes, whatever, you can do that through science now. So this will eliminate the problem with homosexuality and all that. And now the God of science ushers in. So I'm kind of thinking now that this mark of the beast could probably go beyond that homosexuality issue as well. But there's someone in power that's going to be doing this. That's going to be funding this. One of the most richest men that we have here on the planet is Elon Musk. He's doing a lot of crazy stuff. So I wonder.
Yeah. The every system, every government usually has a man or sometimes a group of men at the forefront. So there's no doubt or question that there's going to be individuals involved. But what we know is that the beast does not represent a man. You know that I mean, and none of the heads of the beast represents a man because we have to be consistent in the way we interpret it. Now, for another reason as well, Jesus is a man. Okay, he's an individual. God has given his governing to an individual, and I said that the equivalent is that Satan has given his power to the beast, and so it's tempting to believe that since Jesus is an individual, the beast should also be an individual. But I'm going to show you why it makes perfect sense that it's different. You see, God's way of governing. How does God govern his people? God doesn't use a system of government, an organization, or a kingdom. God uses one person. God's method of government is one man. And that man, by his spirit, lives in you and in me. And that's why there's harmony in the kingdom, because it is one life that controls everything. God's government is unique. There's none other like it in the universe. God's government needs only one man. But the government of Satan's kingdom cannot operate in this way because one man cannot govern Satan's kingdom. What it needs is a system of government with rules and structure and administration and hierarchy to control Satan's kingdom, because where you don't have one life in everybody, you have to use rules and structure and system to bring discipline and some kind of unity, some kind of harmony. So the beast kingdom by necessity must be made up of a governmental system, while God's kingdom of necessity is only one man. So it has to do with the system of government. That's why I keep emphasizing that God's system of government is so unique and so different and so amazing. And this is why Jesus says, Paul says, he talks about the unity of the Spirit. That's where true unity comes from, but it can only exist within the kingdom of God, because we are the only entities on the planet that have the same spirit inside all of us. In Satan's kingdom, you might say, well, they have the spirit of Satan. No, no, no. I don't believe that is true. They're not all demon possessed. They're all self-possessed. The spirit in each one is their own individual spirit. And where self is ruling, there will always be conflict. That is why they need governmental structure and rules and discipline to keep them under some kind of control. In the kingdom of Christ, no. Christ has come to live in our hearts. And when we submit to this, we all will have unity and harmony without that structure that the world needs. So that's the difference between both governments. So that's why I don't think that the beast can be an individual, Brother Ray. Although I do agree that there will be individual men who are prominent within the beast kingdom. Okay, I think I'm just about done for this evening.